Hello, and welcome to the Proverbs Daily Devotional. Today, we're going to get into Proverbs 11:1 and 16:11 that deals with integrity and fairness in business. We tend to think of Sunday as being for the Lord and the rest of the week is for work, and so we segregate our work culture from our religious culture on Sunday. But the book of Proverbs teaches something very different, and we'll get into that and see what the Lord has to say about that. So Proverbs 11:1, the Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with him. And then Proverbs 16:11 says, honest scales and balances belong to the Lord. All the weights in the bag are of his making. So the word detest in Proverbs 11:1 basically means an abomination, or the Lord abhors it, or something that the Lord really despises. So if the Lord really does despise this, we need to be conscious of it and make note of it, that we don't do those sort of things that he doesn't approve of. In our modern culture, a lot of people think or act as if economic concerns or business concerns are separate and distinct from moral or spiritual concerns. People tend to think of themselves as everyone pursues self-interest, and morality has little or nothing to do with it. Proverbs teaches something very different. First of all, archaeologists have found that the weights that we talk about, which were used on scales to measure out how heavy a product was, or so they could determine how much of something they should get to the customer or get from the customer. And archaeologists have actually unearthed weights from the Middle East, and they found that some of them were actually carved out underneath to make them lighter, or they were carved out and then poured with lead to make them heavier. And then the merchants would presumably use them for their favor, or to their favor, when it was concerning products or weighing something for a customer. It's relatively easy to be business practice to stay within the law, but is still treating others that are in a way that is not approving to the Lord. And so we need to think about that if we're a business. So there's 4 areas that I want to talk about today. And the first is being a business owner, which means you're a merchant, or you're selling product, or you're receiving product from a customer. So when we do that as a Christian, we need to make sure that the things that we do, and when we weigh out things and how we represent things, is accurate and honest, that we have integrity in our business. So when it gets down to being honest in our weights and measures and in our exchanges with people, they need to be correct. It's easy for businesses to technically be okay legally, but just not okay morally. And the Lord does not approve of that. Henry Ford understood as well. We're moving into wages, the wages and salaries that businesses pay. So Henry Ford understood that if only he paid his workers a decent wage, they could actually buy the car that they actually made. So people, in their fulfillment of jobs and making a decent living so that they can provide for their families, is important as a business to make sure that we're giving those sort of things to people or employees. So when it comes down to making sure that they're respected for what they do, that they're encouraged to be all that they can achieve and do well, and we need to provide a good wage to them as well. So if you think of fulfillment for jobs, I mean, even hard work, most people find that fulfilling. Farmers, for example, sweat in the heat and shiver in the cold, but they have the joy of making things that grow and feeding a lot of people. Job satisfaction comes from a sense of accomplishment, purpose, and being respected for your work. And we as business owners, when we have employees, need to make sure they feel that way and that we respect their work and what they do for us. Now we move on to the other side of the counter from a customer perspective. So we can be dishonest and lack integrity in our dealings with businesses from a customer perspective. For example, a good friend of mine recently went down and bought a large amount of water. You know, those cases of water. He got a lot of it, and they came out and loaded his trailer up with all this water, and he paid for it and went home, only to find out that they actually loaded 10 cases too much. So what did he do? He went back down to the company that he bought it from and settled up with them. I mean, that is integrity and honesty in your dealings with a business from a customer perspective. For another example might be that, hey, we're in a store and we're getting things that we're going to check out with, and we take maybe get a big box or a big bag of dog food and we throw it under the bottom of the cart and take it out, only to find out that the cashier didn't ring it up. And so what do we do when we get out to the car and we're transferring everything into the car? We realize that they did not ring up the dog food. Do we keep our integrity and be honest? Go back in there and say, look, you didn't ring up the dog food. I want to make sure that we're good on that and that our transaction was right. It's just what the Lord calls us to do. Also, as employees of businesses, we need to act honestly and respectfully to our employer. So that goes down to reporting your time, how do you conduct yourself while you're on the clock per se. There's many of folks that don't necessarily punch a clock per se, but they still, the employer still expects them to do a job and to report and do the job accordingly. And it's easy potentially to not, maybe they come in 15 minutes late, or they leave a half hour early, or, here and there they just, maybe it's just, oh, well, I need a ream of paper at home and I'll just take one from the job and they'll never notice a ream of paper missing, and they probably won't. But that's technically stealing and not maintaining your integrity. I would even go so far as to say how we report our income to the IRS or to the government. It needs to be honest and respectful. Do we report all of our income, or do we take things that are cash based that people just paid us cash and take that back out of what we report to the government? The Lord and the Proverbs calls us to be people of integrity and honesty in our business transactions, and that includes the business with the government. So we see that we need to be honest and respectful and with integrity if we're an employer, if we're a business that is doing business with customers, and even if we're the customer, we need to have integrity, and if we're the employee, we need to have honesty and integrity as well. And then lastly is how we deal with the government and how we report to the government. Are we being honest or are we being deceitful? It all matters, and the Lord detests, it says, detests inaccurate scales. Anything that's dishonest or not true to, fully true, that's what the Lord detests. And we should try to avoid those situations. I hope you enjoyed this proverb, and we will look for you next time. Thanks.